There is a very sneaky Easter egg in one of the recent chapters of One Punch Man that might give us a big indication as to what one of the next major arcs of the story might be. And I'm sure that most of you probably missed it, but that's alright, we're going to cover all of it in today's video. But first, really quick, if you guys enjoy One Punch Man and One Punch Man related content, then you don't need to go anywhere else because I post content multiple times a week talking about various One Punch Man theories, general discussions, and most importantly, chapter reviews, because I do pride myself in being probably one of the first YouTubers to get a chapter review out once a chapter is released. So you definitely want to make sure to have notifications on so you can be the first person around to know once a chapter drops. But now that that's out of the way, let's get into the good stuff. So the chapter in question here is actually the redrawn version of chapter 164. In this chapter, we kind of have the beginning phases of Saitama versus Garo, where we still see Garo in his gargoyle-like form, and this is when we see him grow a second set of arms that he uses as like jet engines to shoot Saitama into the earth so hard that it literally bulges the other side of the planet. We're then taken to this group of people that are stranded on this crashed airplane that seems to be in the middle of the ocean. We then see that some of the people try to escape on a life raft, but due to the massive movement of the crust caused by Garo's attack, a portion of the ocean rises above and creates this waterfall that the life raft then falls over. Before they can fall to their certain death, they're saved by landing on this mysterious temple that catches them in the life raft. And this temple is actually the Easter egg that we're going to be talking about today. And I believe that it's really important because this actually isn't the first time that we see this. For those of you that have read the webcomic, this dragon on the temple might be a little familiar to you. But before I can continue, I do have to say that I will be going into webcomic spoilers from here on out. So if you haven't read the webcomic yet, then, be careful. But the first time we actually see this dragon is actually in chapter 119 of the webcomic. In this chapter, we open up with this monsterized looking guy threatening Saitama to get out of the way, or he's going to bear witness to the power of the dragon blood. Saitama, of course, makes quick work of this guy when he's then approached by several men in this like medieval looking armor, with one of them thanking him by saying, "You actually defeated one of the 9 warriors of the Dragon Alliance. You really helped us out." He then goes on to say that the seal stone won't be taken after all, thank you. The cruel dragon seal has been protected by the actions of Saitama. He goes on to explain further by saying, according to legend, a colossal dragon descended upon Earth and became the embodiment of destruction. In just a few days, it took countless lives and scorched large swaths of land. As a result of its overwhelming cruelty, it became known as the Cruel Dragon. And this cruel dragon is actually the dragon I'm talking about that we see on this temple, which I'll get into more in a second. But the man in the armor then continues to say, ancient soldiers gathered together and with a great many sacrifices managed to weaken the cruel dragon. Seal masters separated the essence of the dragon using 9 seal stones and sealed them in 9 temples scattered across the land. Now these seal stones bear a close resemblance to the cubes that we see in the manga version of the story, and I don't think that that's a coincidence. So there is a possibility that there are 9 cubes out there in the manga version of the story. And the guy goes on to say, the duty of watching over the cruel dragon seals was passed on to our branch known as Saints. Those who believe themselves to be dragonborn and are plotting to resurrect the cruel dragon belong to an organization known as Deathbone. The conflict surrounding the cruel dragon seals has continued for 800 years. Saitama then gets intrigued by, the supposed power of this dragon and goes on to speedrun all 9 temples and gathers all 9 of the seal stones, which then summons the cruel dragon. And in the panel where we see the cruel dragon resurrected, it bears even more of a resemblance to the dragon statue that we see on this temple in chapter 164. It then tries to attack Saitama, but of course, Saitama just one punches it and goes on to buy some bananas later on. But to kind of backtrack and dig into the very important details of this little part of chapter 119, as I said before, the 9 seal stones could be representative of the 9 cubes that are in the manga version of the story, with the Saints being represented by either Blast and his team or the S-Class heroes. Now, Deathbone is probably represented by the monsters and those who choose to accept God's power, because we see also in this chapter that there are 9 executives of the Deathbone organization that attempt to take the Seal Stones, that are kind of like the leaders of their groups. And this could be represent, like for example, Drive Knight, if you guys, subscribe to the idea that he's super shady, or characters with the organization. And the reason I'm also so sure that there are disciples of God, or those who are actively looking to resurrect him, is that when we get to the part in Saitama versus Orochi's fight where Orochi's basically this like blob and he's crawling towards the altar that is then revealed to have God's image imprinted on it, that gives us an indication that in the past and possibly currently right now, there are those who revere this monster god as the one and only God, their quote unquote savior or something, and worship him in hopes that he will soon be resurrected again. I always thought it was kind of interesting that there's even this mural to begin with, because if this exists, then that means that there are people out there who are very much down with the idea of resurrecting God. Now, circling back to this temple, what I believe is going on here is that this temple could either house one of the cubes that is necessary to reviving God, or the temple is one of the locations where the cubes need to be gathered in order to resurrect him, because we see that the Underground Monster Association base was completely destroyed, so the altar that was there is probably buried along with it. So there might be multiple locations where God can be resurrected. Another possibility is that this cruel dragon is like one of the main disciples of God, one of the ultra powerful underlings that he has, that Saitama and the heroes are going to end up facing at some point in the series. And it's very possible that it might be one of the next major arcs coming up, where whether it's, the organization or some other third party that we aren't familiar with just yet manages to gather some of these cubes somehow, might go to this temple and resurrect the cruel dragon, who is then one of the main disciples of God, which of course makes it this like ultra powerful monster that might end up being the big bad of a certain arc, or might be a part of the final God arc, much like the cadre were in the Monster Association arc, like kind of the underlings of the much larger problem. Now, seeing as in the webcomic version there are 9 of these temples, there might be, 9 temples that look like this throughout the manga version. I wouldn't go as far as to say that, but I definitely do think that this temple that we see in chapter 164 is not some kind of pointless little addition. I'm sure that One and Murata deliberately placed this in the story to kind of foreshadow what's to come later. And I'm just so sure of this because this dragon just resembles the one in the webcomic so much, down to the eyes that look like these like sparkly ruby looking things. So that makes me very curious to see where this kind of goes from here on out. And I'm curious to see what God's like core disciples end up being, because we can only imagine how insanely powerful they're going to be. And I think that they're probably going to be as strong, if not, slightly less strong than Cosmic Fear Garo, because he only accepted a small portion of his power. And I'm sure that the people that choose to follow him would be willing to accept a lot more of it. But yeah, that was my little tinfoil hat theory of what this little Easter egg might mean in regards to the future of this story. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below if you think that this temple has any significance at all, or if you guys just think that I'm full of it. I'm very curious to know what your thoughts are. And if you like this video, please make sure to hit the like button. And again, please subscribe. I'm still a pretty fresh channel here. I'm only a couple months old, so any amount of support is very, very much appreciated. But until next one, I'll see you guys later.